So, Andy was a truly great natural leader. Even though he wasn't formally a producer on the show and wasn't a writer, he was a tremendous contributor to its success. Ron Howard, who played Opie Taylor, has remained tight-lipped about his time on the Andy Griffith Show, and who could blame him? Growing up on one of TV's most beloved sets, every fan wants the inside scoop. However, after years of keeping things under wraps, Ron is finally pulling back the curtain on his relationship with Andy Griffith. Was Mayberry as picture-perfect as it seemed? Did Andy embody the charm of Sheriff Taylor off-screen? Get ready, because Ron's revelations just might surprise you. Andy Griffith and Ron Howard are two names that evoke memories of the small-town charm of the Andy Griffith Show, but their relationship was not just about fishing trips and life lessons in Mayberry. Sure, they shared laughs and heartfelt moments on screen, but their bond was complicated behind the scenes. For the first time, Ron Howard spills the tea during his time with Andy Griffith, and trust me, it's not all Sunday strolls and father-son talks. What secrets is Ron finally ready to share, and what about those rumors of friction? Ron Howard was the big-name director behind Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind, but back then, he was just a kid trying to make it in Hollywood. Born on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma, Ron seemed destined for the spotlight. With parents who were working actors, what else would he do but pursue a career in entertainment? By the time Ron was 15 months old, he was already on screen in a commercial, while most of us were still figuring out how to walk. When the family moved to Hollywood, his dad, Rance Howard, became his unofficial acting coach. If that wasn't enough, Ron's parents gave him a front-row seat to live TV productions. By 1960, when Ron auditioned for the Andy Griffith Show, he was already turning heads in Hollywood. While his fiery red hair might have initially caught a few casting directors' attention, his raw talent and curiosity about acting sealed the deal. He received multiple callbacks early on because his hair made him stand out. Landing the role of Opie Taylor at just 6 years old, Ron became a big name. His on-screen relationship with Andy Griffith was pure magic, but what happened behind the scenes was just as important. Andy took him under his wing, teaching him everything from comedic timing to why character motives matter. It wasn't just acting lessons but life lessons wrapped in sitcom charm. Then there was that iconic audition moment. For Ron, the set of the Andy Griffith Show wasn't just where he worked, it was where he learned. While most kids were figuring out recess politics, he was soaking up lessons on collaboration and storytelling. And let's be real, how many kids can say they went to work every day and got life advice from Andy Griffith? The Andy Griffith Show aired in 1960 and quickly became a classic for portraying small-town life and timeless values. Over its 8-season run, it consistently ranked among the top-rated programs on television. Andy Griffith's Sheriff Taylor embodied compassion and wisdom, while Ron Howard's Opie symbolized innocence and curiosity. Together, they created a touching father-son dynamic. Behind the scenes, the cast and crew fostered a warm, family-like atmosphere, contributing to the show's feel-good tone. Did you know the show's iconic whistling theme, The Fishing Hole, is one of the most recognizable TV tunes ever? While the show cemented Andy Griffith as a television legend, it also launched Ron Howard's career, providing him with a solid foundation for future stardom. Transitioning from a cherished childhood role to adulthood is never easy, but Ron Howard managed it with remarkable grace. When the Andy Griffith Show wrapped up, things felt different. It wasn't just another season wrap-up, this was the end of an era. Andy Griffith stood at the microphone, starting to speak, and suddenly it hit him, the tears came. He was crying, not just a few tears, but sobbing. It wasn't just about leaving a job behind, it was about leaving a family, a way of life. He realized that the show had been more than just a gig, it was a huge part of his life, and now, with it all ending, he wasn't sure what life would be like without those familiar faces and that comforting routine. Looking back, it wasn't just the show that had defined his childhood, it was the way his dad had turned an unexpected turn of events into something even bigger. His dad had come to California hoping to finally fulfill a dream on hold because of the Korean War, but his big break didn't come for him, it came for his little boy. That twist of fate made his dad an acting coach, teaching him in a way only a parent could. It wasn't your typical acting class, his dad broke down the craft in a way a little kid could understand, something simple but powerful. Even at 4 or 5, Ron was learning the basics of Stanislavski but simplified. His dad would take a scene, like Opie trying to avoid his homework, and break it down, explaining the emotions behind the lines. See, Opie doesn't want to do his homework, and his dad wants him to. He's just trying to get out of it. His dad would guide him, showing him the layers of the character in a way a child could understand. And if there were ever a scene where Opie was getting away with something, he would quickly remind him, that's TV, not real life. Don't try it at home. But his dad wasn't just an acting coach, he had this rare gift. He wasn't intimidated by anyone, no matter how powerful they were. He worked with legends like Andy Griffith, Don Knotts, Aaron Rubin, and Sheldon Leonard. But even with all these big names, his dad would raise his hand and say, "Hold up. I don't think this is working. Opie's coming across as too bratty. Instead of cheap laughs, let's make their relationship more honest." The crazy part was that they listened. Andy and Sheldon heard him out and agreed that shift, making Opie's relationship with his dad more real, ended up being a game changer for the show. Fast forward to the final days of shooting. Ron was 14, and the rap party was unlike anything before. The show was still #1, but Andy Griffith was ready to move on, and honestly, he was okay with it. He had other interests, sports, directing, and returning to school. But when the final day of shooting came, it felt like a punch to the gut. At the party, Andy took the mic, and just like that, the tears started flowing. It wasn't just a show ending, it was a chapter of his life closing that he didn't fully realize he'd miss until that moment. He was saying goodbye to people who had become family, people who had shaped so much of who he was, and it stung. Nearly 20 years later, they brought the show back for a reunion movie. By then, Ron had moved on, he was directing and had even left Happy Days behind. Life was different, but Andy asked him to return and reprise his role as Opie. Of course, he agreed, and when he did, he was reminded that the people he had worked with back then, those same wonderful people, were just as he remembered. The childhood memories were untouched, the connection as strong as ever. It was like no time had passed at all. Meanwhile, Andy Griffith wasn't done dazzling audiences. After his days in Mayberry, he took on the role of a sharp yet folksy lawyer in Matlock, proving that Southern charm and a sharp suit never go out of style. Viewers loved him all over again, and the show became another hit. But Andy didn't stop there, he also tapped into his musical roots, releasing country and gospel albums inspired by his Southern upbringing. Even with all these achievements, Andy always remembered his Mayberry days as the highlight of his career, and he stayed close to his castmates, especially Ron Howard, whom he lovingly called his son in spirit. Andy Griffith wasn't just the lovable sheriff of Mayberry, he was also a mentor who took his role as a guide seriously, even off-screen. Andy wasn't the type to clock out when the camera stopped rolling, he continued to steer young Ron Howard with nuggets of wisdom, always delivered with that sincere, down-to-earth charm. The two stayed close long after the Andy Griffith Show ended, often catching up over quiet chats or family hangouts. Andy didn't just cheer on Ron's dreams of becoming a director, he assured him that cracking Hollywood was just like fishing, it required patience, effort, and maybe a little luck. Ron took Andy's advice to heart because his directorial career kicked off with a bang, or rather, a splash. Splash, the whimsical romantic comedy about a mermaid falling for Tom Hanks, was a surprise hit in 1984. Audiences and critics loved it, and apparently, everyone was okay with suspending their disbelief about a fish woman. Moments after that, Ron kept the hits coming with Cocoon in 1985, a film about aging, life, and oddly enough, aliens. Now, to Andy Griffith, the man behind the scenes. While his TV persona was warm and chatty, Andy was more reserved. He valued his privacy and wasn't one to spill his life story to the press. But those who knew him, like Ron, described him as a guy with a wicked sense of humor, impeccable manners, and rock-solid morals. Andy also had a deep love for music. When he wasn't dishing out life advice, he could often be found strumming his guitar or singing gospel songs. His small-town North Carolina upbringing shaped him, and he never let fame turn him into someone he wasn't. Then there's A Beautiful Mind, 2001, which explored the messy brilliance of mental illness. Not only did it rake in awards, but it also earned Ron his first Oscars for Best Director and Best Picture. It's like the guy has a cheat code for telling human stories on a massive scale. Andy Griffith sure didn't have an easy ride in his later years. He faced some serious health battles, including a heart attack and Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare condition that messes with your nervous system. But here's the thing, Andy didn't let that slow him down. He kept doing what he loved, sticking with his entertainment career and staying in touch with his fans. He often talked about how his passion for storytelling and work kept him going, even when things got tough. For Ron, these moments weren't just touching, they were bittersweet. Andy wasn't just a co-star, he was like that wise uncle who always knew what to say. Their last meetings were quiet, full of that unspoken bond you only get with someone who truly understands you. Ron still treasures Andy's final words, clinging to them like an heirloom but thankfully without the panic of, what if I lose this? Looking at their friendship, they left an unshakable legacy as iconic as Aunt Bee's pie recipes in TV history. Their real-life bond brought something special to the Andy Griffith Show. Fans weren't just watching Sheriff Taylor and Opie, they were watching two people who genuinely cared for each other. That father-son dynamic set the gold standard for wholesome family vibes, warmth, respect, and communication so good it would make a family therapist proud. Even now, the magic hasn't faded. Ron hasn't let Andy's memory fade either. He's the guy who casually drops Andy anecdotes into interviews like he's reminiscing over coffee. He credits his Hollywood success to the values Andy taught him, like respect, kindness, and keeping cool under pressure. As a director, Ron kept Andy's spirit alive on his sets. No diva drama, just a collaborative, respectful vibe where even the crew feels like family. It's the kind of leadership Andy would have approved of, and it keeps his legacy thriving in every film Ron touches.